Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another exciting and inspiring episode of On Location with Zara Durrani, produced with the support of TELUS STORYHIVE. It's been a pleasure being your host and bringing you some inspiring locals whose conversations have been really inspiring and motivating me. And I'm here on my third cup of coffee today. Joining me is someone who I've known for quite some time. I'm sure you are familiar with his body of work, which is like a big body of work. And, you know, if you're a Canadian television fan, if you're an actor, you watch Hollywood movies, sci-fi shows, whether it is anything like Sanctuary. I got to know your good friend Agam Darshi quite well. I've interviewed him on the red carpet several times, and today in the rain, he drove all the way from Squamish in this pouring rain to join us today for this holiday special. I'm talking about none other than the award-winning actor, Ryan Robbins.
Wow, hi.
Hi,
That
welcome.
was a heck of an introduction. I should probably just cut my losses and run
No,
now.
I could just like have your like IMDb rolling through it, and it's like it's a bit endless, and you hit like go deeper, and it's like, oh, there's more, and there's more, and you're scrolling through, and I'm going through YouTube at like 6 in the morning today when getting my hair done, and I'm like, man, like you've like.
I've been
Like
around.
you're a working act. You are like, you know, the Canadian. It's like you put in Ryan. It's like Ryan Reynolds, Ryan Robbins. Like you know, that's what I see like in Google.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind the Ryan Reynolds angle a little bit. But yeah.
I mean, come on. I was taking a look at some of those action films that you're shooting in Europe. Like
It's pretty
some
fun.
pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, I've been really fortunate. I've been very, very fortunate. I am, somebody said to me recently, like, oh, you're the other Ryan.
Yes.
Like, I'm the other Ryan. Yeah, like the one less people know about. The funny thing, my family likes to say that somebody asked me once in writing, they said, what's it like to be famous? But they put an E at the end. So it was like, what's it like to be famous? And that's the running joke in my house is like, no, Dad, you're not famous, you're famous. It's like that's like I feel like that's Canadian fame is like, you know, we're not famous, we're famous.
You know, it's funny. You may not remember this. This is like maybe 9 years ago or 10 years, like just after VISAF, the Vancouver International South Asian Film Festival, that Agam and Patricia started. And funny thing, that's how I got my start as a host, because there was someone helping out, and they're like, Zara has a personality. I think she should do the interviews. And I was like, what does that even mean? And I think I met you there. And then I saw you at like the Metro, like around Granville. And I remember being like, oh my God, this is the guy from Sanctuary. He works with Aga.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, hi. And then just to see the trajectory of like your work, and like also interviewing you at the UBCP Awards. And I have to say, like, you have a presence. You're very grounded. You know, it's like I had another actor here earlier interviewing, and it's interesting after like I act too sometimes here and there, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But when you get to interview so many actors, I've found that there's two different kinds. There's the ones who are very like energy is very contained and grounded, and they're like, you know, yeah, man, this is just a job. And then there's the, you know,
yeah.
And you, I found, like, I remember every time I've interviewed you on the red carpet, you're just like, you know, no matter how many awards you've won, no matter like what your star is rising, or how many fans or followers, or what big show you're working on, there's something very, I guess, Canadian about you, as in like very down to earth and very humble. Is that what you hear like fan conventions? Because I know you've gone to a lot of those.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we're performers by trade, and I think a lot of actors are performative in nature, and they like to be on and to perform. I'm a blue collar kid. I come from a very working class family, a military family, and so I sort of take a bit of a working class approach to the business. I love this so much. I'm so grateful for the fortune that I have had in this business, and I don't want to take it for granted. I think if you had talked to me, maybe 15 years ago, I think around Sanctuary time, I was definitely more, look what I can do, a bit more performative. I'm older now, I'm grounded now, I have a family, and I have other things that I do. I own a shop called Harbinger Customs in Squamish, where we build custom motorcycles. I've always got hobbies. I'm always playing music. I started making knives. I like to be busy creatively, and I think by finding those outlets, it's allowed me to be calmer as a person, because I have creative outlets everywhere in my life. I need to create. I must create, or I will go mad. Like, for my mental health, I've got to be creating, whether it's acting, music, songwriting, building, creating, knife making. I just have to do that, and if I can do that, it helps me stay grounded and calm as a person. I think that's helped a lot. Whereas before, I felt like I was a racehorse just trapped at the gate, like wanting to show everybody what I could do, and then I'd come to a situation like this, I'd be like, hey, and I'd be more on, which isn't to say that's the same for other people, but that was, I think, the case for me. Is having those outlets has been really helpful, and I'm also, I have children, so I'm tired a lot.
But I'm sure also, like, living in a place like Squamish, and like even on a day like today when it's raining, like driving into the city and then driving back home, it's very like grounding. And to be honest, like, so before COVID, I was living in Paris, and then coming back here, I went through this big mental health thing. It's like we're all finally talking about mental health and self-care and therapy. But I realized, like, I've been to all these places in the world, and not explored much BC, and secondly, the nature, and how that impacts this. And when I step away, like even over the weekend, even if I'm going down to Pacific Spirit Park or Jericho Beach, and in the morning or even in the rain, like how it affects me, and then I can show up and be present with you, versus when I'm just focusing on the work so much.
Yeah.
So when did you guys move to Squamish, and did you notice some correlation between like being out there versus the city, or have you been there
I think
for
so.
a long time?
We moved there about 8 years ago. I was in LA, and we splitting my time between Los Angeles and Vancouver. So I had a place in Los Angeles, had a place in Vancouver, and I was just getting overwhelmed by city. And I lived in LA off and on for 15 plus years. I could never get it to feel like home for me, and I was always anxious. I always felt like I wasn't doing enough. I should be doing. It was really hard for me to feel grounded and feel rested. It was very stressful for me, and so we were going to move back up to Canada more permanently. And we were looking around, and Squamish kept coming up. And I had filmed a movie in Squamish 20 years ago with The Rock called Walking Tall. And
I remember that.
Yeah, and
yes.
it was an amazing experience. I found out I was going to be a father for the first time there, and Dwayne was amazing with me on that set, and told me, babies bring luck, and you were right, Dwayne, because I know you're watching, because Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, will watch this for sure, guys. He had just really wonderful advice for me about this business and fatherhood, coming from being a professional wrestler, and his first daughter was quite young. I think she was 2 back then. Anyway, so Squamish had this like place in my heart all of a sudden, and then about a decade later, I shot a TV series there called The Guard, and the place had changed quite a bit, but it still had this sense of outdoors community, and it had been a logging town, and so we decided to move there, which was kind of seemed crazy at the time, but I love it. It's like I walk out my door, and there's a beautiful estuary, and there's bears and cougars, and it's like I live in a small town in the mountains. It's getting bigger. It is getting bigger. It's growing quickly. It's growing a lot, growing quickly. It's changing a lot. It's changed a lot since we've been there. Yeah, I do enjoy. God, the view, and it just smells different there. It's like, you know, I'm surrounded by mountains. There's mountains on three sides, and then there's the ocean. It's a great community. It's a great town, and I'm not, you know, I think everyone got over the fact that I was an actor really quickly, that I was on television and movies. That went away really quickly, and then I'm the guy that has the motorcycle shop in Squamish, and I kind of like it. It's nice.
Love it. Well, hopefully next time we need to go and film there.
For sure, it's a great spot.
So, you know, I'm like going through the Google images and the YouTube, like, you know, I was like, I want to find like old clips.
Oh no.
You know, like 6 a.m. today. And I'm like, okay, excuse me to say this. I'm like, wow, like Ryan really like found the gym.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
I'm like, we're like really, because I see like, you know, you in Sanctuary and the poster, and there's Agam, there's you, and Amanda tapping, and you know, like all of that. And I'm like, all of a sudden, it's like the pipes are like, we're like man of the woods, you know? And I've heard in interviews, like you're really into martial arts, like you're really into physically training. Like I saw this like interview clip, I worked once with Kimani.
Yeah.
And he's like really into directing now.
Yeah, he's got it, yeah. Look, I love Kimani. We've been friends, I think, since we were 14 years old.
Wow.
We both had dreams of working in the film industry when we were in high school, and you know, we both made it. Kimani's the reason I ended up in Vancouver. Kimani's one of the reasons I actually got into this. I was able to get into this business. I've been studying martial arts since I was about 10, and then I used my martial arts abilities I translated that into becoming a circus performer for a while. I was a circus performer in Australia. And then when I came back, I was talking to Kimani. He said, well, come to Vancouver.
Circus performer?
Yeah.
Doing what?
I did acrobatics. I had a stilt routine. I did tumbling, a little bit of trampoline, a little trapeze. I was sort of like...
What did your parents think about that? Sorry, I totally like, I'm like,
my
circus?
mom loved it because I also got to put on clown face from time to time, and my mom used to collect clowns when I was a kid, which is super creepy. Love you, Mom, but you know it was creepy. So my mom actually came out. I was in Australia, and she came out for like a month or so and toured with the circus, and she was down. She loved it. But anyway, I came back, and Kamani's like, oh, come see me. I'm doing stunts. Come to set. And then he had said, you know, with your martial arts background and your circus performing, you should get into stunts. It might be a good way to break into acting. And there was a stunt school happening at the time. And I said, oh, yeah, great. So I signed up for this stunt school. And then I did stunts for about 5 minutes. And it was not how to break into acting. It's hard work, really hard work. I have so much love and respect for our stunt brothers and sisters. You know, some of my favorite people, and it was really competitive for people my age and my size at the time. And then I had an accident. I was working at a warehouse, and I had an accident and compressed my spine, and it put me out of stunts for a while. I was in a band at the time. Bear with me. And then a filmmaker who I'm still friends with to this day. She's a wonderful acting coach named Kristen Clarkson.
She used to have a school around the corner. I went to her school.
Yeah.
Like, no joke.
Yeah, so I went to her school, early school,
What?
because
No.
Yeah, because I, as a musician, I was playing in bands. I had such stage fright that with Kirsten, I came to Kirsten because I wanted to be able to create a character to help me get over my stage fright. I thought, you know, the inner actor in me was like, well, just create a character. And that's how I first met her. And then it turns out, you know, she was a fan of my band. Other people were fans of my band. And then, she put me in her movie, in her independent movie, with my dear, dear friend Todd Kearns, who was a singer for a band called The Age of Electric. at the time, who now is a
I saw that
singer,
interview
bass player
on
for
the
Slash, and-
YouTube. He has like long black hair.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And so Todd Kearns is one of my dearest friends, and we did this movie, Holly Ferguson, and then from that I got an agent, and then the rest was kind of history. Here we are. You know, my band broke up, and I just focused on acting. And
Isn't that crazy that how I feel like the path you're meant to be on, like that's what you were meant to do. Like anything you could be stunting, you could be falling downstairs,
Yeah.
climbing buildings.
Look, I thought my
or
life
like-
trajectory was, I come from a military family. I thought I was going to join the military and then become a first responder. I was be a firefighter or paramedic. Because that was the trajectory I had seen. That was what I had witnessed. That was what was laid before me. So that was where I was headed. I had trained to fight forest fires when I was young. I was going to go do that when I got my first sort of paid gig, my first big break. First guest star on a show, which was a show called 7 Days. And I had my first like real like trailer that wasn't a honey wagon. It was like a trailer. And I was like, oh, I called my mom. I was like, come visit. Like my mom came over to Vancouver to see my trailer, and she met the director. And I think at the time, the director was so amazing and so nice. And my mom came, my aunt came, and I looked back and I was like, oh God, like that's so, I can't believe I did that. But everybody was so kind and so supportive, and I worked so hard. I wanted to do such a good job, and I was so grateful, and I had the best time. And then it just started going from there. Because up until that point, I'd been playing characters like seedy guy, sketchy dude. Me and Michael Eklund would bump into each other at auditions and on sets, and he'd be sketchy dude, I'd be seedy guy, or vice versa, or I'd be like punk rocker number 2, and he'd be like punk rocker number 1, or we would bump into each other in all these random places as these like punks. And even though I did play like a punk rocker on 7 Days, it was a guest star. It was a really good role, and it had a lot to do, and I learned a lot, and then that's how gradually casting directors started letting me act, and and letting me stretch. And
I love that. And one of the things, I mean, I know it's sounding like it's very serendipitous, like the way you're performing and the acting bug that came through. But when you were younger, you certainly weren't like, I'm going to be a performer. Like, yeah, you were in this, the circus, doing kind of the, not quite Cirque du Soleil, but the clown stuff, and traveling and performing. It sounds like very curious about the world as well.
Yes. Very.
But was it when you got your first agent and things started happening that you're like, maybe I'm going to give this acting thing a try? Did you have like a limit in your brain of like how long you're going to try it for? Or you're just like, this is all I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to focus on.
When I was 12 years old, I remember vividly the moment I knew I wanted to be an actor. I just didn't know how to do it. It just took me a really long time to figure it out. We're on the playground and everybody's talking about what they want to be when they grow up, and I wanted to be all kinds of things. And I had this bizarre epiphany. I had seen these kids in junior high do a play. They came to our school with a play that they had done. I was like, oh, that's really cool. And I'd like to try that. And I remember everybody telling me what they want to be when they grow up, and I had all these things that were like, that sounds like a good idea. And I thought, wait, if I become an actor, I can be all those things. And that was it. And I was like, but I didn't know how to do it, and it just seemed like such a fantasy. And you try to tell people, where I grew up, I want to be an actor. Like, okay, yeah, whatever, kid, good luck. You have better luck winning the lottery. And but it was always in my mind. And I did some theater stuff growing up. But once I had the opportunity, sort of presented itself, and I've worked really hard to get to it, but you're right, a lot of things did happen organically. And again, I just feel like people say this a lot, and I know it sounds a little bit flaky, but I really do believe that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be an actor. I'm supposed to be a storyteller.
No, it's not. It's
I was
you're
put here to be a
following
storyteller, and I was put here to be different than what I was expected to be. and so far so good. I'm still here.
And you're also entertaining us. You know, it's like, it's something to be said, especially over the last couple of years, whether it is looking at a, sometimes I go to the movies by myself a lot.
Yeah, it's great.
And especially if something is filmed in a different country, it inspires me to like go see that. Like I went to see Mission Impossible. I was like, oh, it's in Italy. Okay. The fact that Tom Cruise was doing his own stunts. Okay, I want to see that. And I want to see Italy because I get so, like your Sniper series, like, you know, going from like, okay, you've been in some of like my favorite projects. I'm not saying that because you're here. I obsessively, like if I really like a show,
Yeah.
I will stay up all night. I'm one of those people.
Oh, I know. I get that. Yeah.
I am like, not many shows hook me in, but you were in The Killing.
Yes.
And you were good. You were nominated, and like you multiple award-winning actor. And that there's something about this show that just like reels you in. You can't let it go. The music, the actors, the rain, the city. It's in Vancouver, and you know, of course, Joel Kinnaman and Miri. Yes. And you were fantastic.
Oh, thank you. That was a career highlight for me. That was one of the, I mean, gosh, I could tell you stories about
Please do.
That series. I loved my time on that show, and it was, I originally turned that role down because of the nature of the character, being a father of, I had one daughter at the time. I have two daughters now, and I was like, ooh. And she was of an age, I was like, oh gosh, this is rough. I don't know if I want to play this guy. And we talked about it, and ultimately, obviously, decided to do it. And I remember we were so fortunate that Jonathan Demme came on and directed, and of course, Jonathan Demme's like multiple Academy Awards, you know, Silence of the Lambs, Philadelphia. He's just one of the greatest filmmakers for me. I just think he was
Legend.
Such an incredibly influential filmmaker, and he like me, just likes, he loves being a part of telling stories. So he came to direct The Killing, and we were all like, holy my goodness, Jonathan Demme's here. And we sat down, and it was an episode that was focused on my character. It was the turn where I've been arrested. I'm in the interrogation room, and my character's girlfriend comes in. They send her in to ask questions, and Jonathan Demme said, "How do you see this scene playing?" I was like, "Whoa, hey, you're Jonathan Demme. You tell me." He's like, "No, I want to hear how you." I was like, "Oh no, the way I see it, it requires editing. It's just I'm going to defer to you. You know, you're a legend." And he said, "Well, let's talk about it." And I was like, "Oh, okay, Jonathan Demme." And then he said, we were talking. He goes, "Why do you think you get cast to play bad guys so often when you're clearly not? When you're a nice guy?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. It's probably easier to hire a nice guy to play a bad guy. Nobody wants to work with a jerk." And he said, I remember he said, "I don't think it's that." He said, "Do you want to know why I fought for Anthony Hopkins to be Hannibal Lecter?" I was like, no, I don't want to hear that story." "Yes, please. Of course I want to hear that story." He said, "Because I wanted people to believe him as a doctor. I wanted people to believe that you would trust him to be your doctor." So that evil side is more of a surprise.
Yeah.
And I thought,
I was in shock too.
I was like, oh. And that really informed a lot of my decisions. So in that scene, there's a really dark turn, and I owe that to Jonathan Demme. And my wife had said to me, she watched it, and she said, "I think that is the greatest work you've ever done, and I will never watch that again." And I thought, well, that's a really good compliment. That's a great compliment. I think I creeped people out so much that character became quite memorable. And I mean, that character was basically the red herring, one of the red herrings of the season. But I also got to work with so many amazing actor, or just hang out with like, oh my gosh, like hang out with Peter Sarsgaard and Elias Cotes. Like, oh my goodness, like you want to talk about Canadian royalty? Like that guy's amazing. He's our De Niro. Like, and I got to, and Mireille Enos is so incredible. We had a fight scene, and we were talking about martial arts. I've had a good number of fight scenes like throughout my career. I've done a lot of them, and Sanctuary really showed everybody that I was capable of fighting, which I owe a lot of that to Marshall Virtue, who's our stunt coordinator, for knowing that I could do it, taking a shot on me. But with the killing, we had these fight scenes, and I'm supposed to be choking Mireille, and she's like, well, you know jujitsu. So, and she knew jujitsu, and she knew taekwondo. She said, let's just, you just choke me, and I'll just defend it. And I was like, I'm looking around.
And like just in the moment, like there wasn't like rehearsal. You're like, okay, let's.
It was contained, and it was somewhat choreographed. But even the stunt coordinator was like, yeah, I think you
just
should
go for it. Yeah.
And so they're shooting the scene. In I've got her on the ground, and I'm choking her. But they had to put us up on quick decks to shoot up at us. And I remember she kicked up a leg to sweep me. If you know jiu-jitsu, it's like to then try to get on top. It's just intuitive for her to do that. And I remember thinking, oh, we're going off. We're going to fall. And we were falling off the quick decks. And I remember holding on to her as tight as I could because I was like, do not break the number one. Do not let the number one on your show break. So I'm holding on to her, and I remember hitting the concrete and my head snapping back. And I remember thinking, oh, this is going to suck. And I don't know where he came from, but the guy, God, I wish I could remember his name. The guy who was doubling me, he dove in out of nowhere, and I just feel this hand catch the back of my head. And I have no idea where he came from, but he for sure saved me from having a massive concussion or really hurting myself. And that was like, I don't know, it was cool. It was really cool. Yeah, and Mireille was like, she was so good. She is such a phenomenal actor, but physically, she's no joke. Like that woman, I mean, like Joel Kinnaman, obviously he is no joke physically, but Mireille, I would not mess with that woman.
Wow.
Yeah, she's incredible. She was incredible.
I also just love watching her on camera, like like the whole thing, like when your character turns, like I remember, like I'm just going, because this is a while ago.
Yeah.
I binge watch. I just couldn't stop myself. I'm like, it's like, it obviously, I'm like feeling kind of like, it did scare me. I'm like scared easily,
Yeah.
like, and I'm like, no, that is not the story. That doesn't happen, because every episode had this cliffhanger, and they just like reel you in. The music, the everything, the writing, it's just so phenomenal. And to see Vancouver actors, to see Canadian actors in it, to watch your work in it,
Yeah, you know who else blew me away on that series was Bex Taylor Klaus. And they played Bullet. And I have just so much love and admiration for Bex, and Bex is a bit of a trailblazer in their own right. And but I remember they blew me away. Absolutely blew me away with every breath they took. I was just like, you are special. You are special. But yeah, it was just, they had lightning in a bottle on that show, I think.
Wow. I want to talk about Sanctuary a little bit, because, we were talking off camera about your guys' fan base. I became like really good friends with Agam, and I was actually hoping to get her today, and Michael as well. I'm going to get them in January. I mean, that would have been like, if Agam was here, I was like, okay, that's fun, like the Sanctuary day. She's like, honey, I was just thinking about you, but I'm flying away to like film something and whatnot. But your guys' fan base was so dedicated. And, to see, of course, like over the years how these sci-fi shows have evolved, but like Sanctuary back in the day with the storytelling and the fact that you worked on a show with this many episodes, what is it, 49?
Which one?
Sanctuary.
God, I don't know.
Yeah, on your IMDb, I was like, wow, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, because it started
that's
as a web
lot
series.
of days.
Yeah, it started as a web series, and then it became a network show. Yeah, that was my first time anybody ever took a shot on giving me a series regular role on something. I mean, I learned that Sanctuary will always have a really, really important and dear place in my heart because I owe a lot of my career to that show and to those people. And also friendships. Amanda Tapping is still one of my dear friends. Ugam, I talk to Ugam regularly, and Ugam and I were both working on a show with different episodes, but we were block shooting on a show in like Newfoundland. I was like, oh my gosh, like see you and catch up, but Sanctuary always comes up, always. We always end up talking about Sanctuary, and seeing where she's where she's gone with her career now, and just as a filmmaker in general, I mean, just exceptional. And then now, she's working a lot. She's acting again. Like, she was so focused on filmmaking that I feel like she kind of accidentally stepped away from acting for a minute, and then as soon as she picked it up again, she's just absolutely killing it because she should be, because she's amazing.
What was it like for you when, you're saying that's like your first, because as soon as I see on the IMDb and as soon as I see 49 episodes, I'm like, Vancouver actor, like local Canadian actor doing this many episodes on a show. Like, I think of the work, right? Mm-hmm. Like the days, like it's like another person, maybe if they're not in the industry, it's like how many days and how many hours and how much blood, sweat, and tears and, catching up on sleep or not, or sleep deprived. Yeah. But also as a performer, when you book that kind of work and to be on a show, and then you're going to these fan expos and you're going, and then of course your career now, like we'll, come up to like some of the projects that you're doing now. But those were the beginnings. Like, what was it like for you as a performer, knowing that, oh my God, I'm getting to do this. I'm getting paid to do what I love, and this is on the regular, and I get to explore this character and grow. It's the best. I mean, back then too, like being a regular on a TV series was mind-blowing, and it's the closest thing to job security you'll ever have as an actor. And then I didn't realize that all goes away. I didn't realize, a series can only go for so long. And so I was like, this is my life now. This is amazing. I'm on a series regular on a show. This is going to last forever. And when Sanctuary ended, I was devastated. I was just devastated because it was so important to me. And I loved every minute of it. And I worked really hard. And, and still to this day, like, I love this job. I'm so lucky, and I love what I do. And I don't like to be a complainer on set. I can be, obviously. I mean, as I'm getting older, I really don't like night shoots. That's about it. But I'm still happy to be there. I'm still always happy to be there. And I love getting to know crew members and talking to different crew members. And I love getting to know people. And I think, I mean, Sanctuary ended in a really strange way for me. But just because I ended up with this nasty concussion at the end of the series, but that just showed me how much I was loved, because the way everybody sort of came together around my injury was incredible. It was emotional, and it was so genuine and sincere. Everybody's care and concern, and that really cemented my love for the show in a really weird way. The fact that the way everybody responded to me getting hurt was exceptional. It made me feel like $1 million. Yeah. And now from then to now, it's like I was mentioning earlier, I feel like you're a PR person, but kind of a fan as well. And then also the fact that it's really amazing when you get to see, because I remember back then to now, and just to see how busy you've been, and how your career has grown, and then to see you going off to film projects in Europe and doing this like action stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I wanted to bring up, I'm like, sometimes my inner monologue just comes out. I'm like, wow, Ryan's been hitting the gym hard. You know, I'm like, we're getting ready for those action sequences.
I think, you know, you get to a certain age and your body wants to be a little bigger. And I remember talking to John Cassini about it and thinking like, I don't know, man, like my body just seems to want to be a different size now. So do I just lean into it and be the character guy, or do I go back and train hard and see what that does for me? And he reminded me of this conversation just like not too long ago, and so I decided I'd go back to the gym. I had to work out really hard for Sanctuary because I was a werewolf and or a hyper accelerated protean, and I was naked a lot. I mean, we didn't have magic denim shorts like those other guys, and I had my shirt off a lot in that show, and the shirts I did have were quite fitted. So I was working out a lot, but I was smaller. So the training and the dieting wasn't anything new. It's just how do I translate that at my age? And then when I got offered the opportunity to be part of an action franchise, like in my 40s, I was like, oh, you gonna now? Okay. But I was like, I'm really gonna. And my co-star on the Sniper movies is a machine. Chad Michael Collins he's not human. He's an absolute machine. He's so ripped and so shredded and so dedicated to. I was like, well, you're setting the bar really high, man. Like I'm older than he is, and but I'm also very competitive. So I was like, you know what?
Bring it.
Okay.
Let's go.
And doing these movies has actually got me in the best shape of my life. And, you know, it's also made me really focus on old injuries and get myself back. And my oldest daughter is, her job is the fitness industry. She's a personal trainer. She's a fitness model. So I also feel the extra accountability because of her career choice. I was like, wow, I gotta keep her proud. I gotta, you know, I want to, and because of that, we get to train together.
I was just gonna say, do you guys get together for the holidays and like before you're having your big dinner, you're like, okay, we're gonna plank?
Yeah, well, she's actually she's competing in a few months, so she's prepping to compete, and I'm prepping for a different show, a different job, and so we're both kind of. We both kind of commiserate over the phone, like, I'm so hungry. You know,
I offered him croissant before, like, I am like the croissant lady.
So we're just trying to figure out how we're going to get through Christmas because my mom will feed us. She's going to make us eat. So, yeah, it's pretty funny. But it's been something really, it's also been bonding. It's something to share together. You know, fitness is something that we both enjoy, we both love, and she also started as a martial artist as well, and still trains. So we've sort of had that, and I'm very proud of her. And you know, my little one she's the delicate flower. She's the artist. She is so much the artist. My little one, she's very talented musician and little performer, and I'm really fortunate. I have amazing kids. You know, my life is. I'm a lucky man.
You're content. You're doing what
never
you
content.
love.
I'm never content.
No.
I am
growing and content. Can they be both together at the same time?
Perpetually restless.
Yeah.
I do not. You ask anybody in my close circle of friends, I do not sit still well. This is the most sitting still I've done in a long time, and this coffee is not helping because I am bouncing on the inside.
We love it. What do you think? Like, talking about fitness and workouts and such. You know, I was mentioning earlier COVID and like really appreciating the natural beauty of BC. The other thing I got into, and it comes and goes, and like yesterday I actually injured my back a little bit, like working out, but lifting weights was something that I got into, and you were mentioning that how your family was in the military. So is mine, and like I moved to Canada at 17, and soon afterwards I was going to join the Canadian Reserves. And the person I was with at the time, they were former military and convinced me to like not join. Yep. Anyways, I accidentally got into modeling and then acting and hosting and all that 9 yards, but like such a tomboy growing up. But there's something about like.
Sorry, a quick question. You accidentally got into modeling. You make it sound like you accidentally looked into the mirror one day and went, you know what, actually, that's pretty good. like, you obviously got into modeling.
No, Ryan, I did not know how to walk in heels. I didn't even know how to wear mascara. Like, I was a teenager. I grew up with all boys, like cousins.
Were you tomboy?
I was super tomboy. Like, wore the military boots, like my brothers and cousins' clothes. Like, they would be like, "Why are you wearing my shirt?" Like, I was that person.
And where did you grow up?
Pakistan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I was definitely not the girly girl. And it was like coming here and training for the military that got me in really good shape and doing these boxer fit kind of classes. Like, I got down to like the lowest, maybe it was a bit scary, it was like 8% body fat, and like really training super, super intensely. And then finally, I have smaller bone structures. So it's like, I didn't really have much upper body strength, so I had to like develop that, like really doing, anyways, make sure. So I want to talk about like fitness and how that affects our mental health, because during COVID and all of that, and I think like actors, like you guys, really with each character, you get to, you know, change and morph into this person, whether it is the sniper.
Growling, sorry.
Yeah. Whether it's the sniper movies, or, you know, like whether you're like a scientist or a different character, you get to like become this and use your body as an instrument and then train in that way. But throughout the times, throughout the year, in between roles, you still have to train, and it must have such a great positive effect on your mental health. Because I recognize that, okay, like walking is what I would do only as a workout, but there's something spectacular that happens even when I hurt my lower back, when I like lift weights and I challenge like myself. Like, do you ever train as like the character, or are you always like training as like Ryan? Are you like a method actor, or like, you know, how does your training look like?
I mean, I you know, there is the adage of stay ready so you don't have to get ready. I do find the gym is really good for my mental health. You're right, you do get a bit of an endorphin rush sometimes, but some days it can be devastating. Some days you don't have a good workout and you leave feeling like, oh, God. But I'm a firm believer in like small victories, and showing up is a worthy victory that you should celebrate. If you just show up, you show up to the gym, you're going to get something done, and it's better than nothing, right? And but when it comes to roles, I will very much train specifically for the role. Like when I did this TV show called Pure, which is I played a Mennonite pastor. Obviously, they were like, "We need you to not hit the gym." But I thought, well, no, but he's a farmer. He's still gonna be strong. I just don't have to not be lean. And so I altered all my workouts and my diet so he just looked like he ate bread and cheese, but looked like he could lift, you know, hay bales really easy. And I, you know, we did that. But then the second season we came back and my character was supposed to be really down and out and disheveled and kind of near death. So I lost like 35 pounds. 30 pounds. I think I lost 30 pounds to go into the second season to be leaner. These aren't. When I played Charles Manson, I think I dropped near 40 pounds.
Wow, Charles Manson.
Played Charles Manson. That was hard. You know, he was such a slight guy, and I have I'm not a tall guy, but I have broad shoulders for a shorter guy. I have a bit of a thicker neck, so I've kind of always had that, like, I don't have like a long torso. I don't have, you know, you hear everybody like, every personal trainer will tell you when a guy says, you know, like, trainer says, what do you want to look like? Every guy will say Brad Pitt in Snatch. Like, that's what everybody wants, you know, Brad Pitt in Snatch or Brad Pitt in Fight Club. Everybody wants to look like Brad Pitt, but Brad Pitt is a genetic phenom. Like, he's got a long torso. He's, you know, he's Brad Pitt. Like, he's one of the best looking people on the freaking planet. But that body's not attainable for most people, right? It's like, I love when Kumail Nanjiani got fit for Eternals. I was working with Kumail on Twilight Zone when he was starting the program, and so we were talking a lot about his training that he had just started. And when he made that statement about, please don't think this is attainable for everybody. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, obviously. He said, this is Marvel, this is studios. They've got me with the best trainers and the best doctors and the best so-and-sos and the best chefs. And he's like, this is not attainable for just everybody. So please don't look at me, the guy who went from Silicon Valley to Eternals and looks like this now, as something that's just you could just do overnight. He's like, it's been really hard and had to change his entire lifestyle. But also, I'm really grateful that he said that, because you know, it isn't for everyone, and everybody's bodies react differently, and everybody has different genetics to take into consideration. I have been training my whole life between martial arts and the circus, and I have sort of I think of like a gymnast meets rugby player kind of physique. So there's muscle memory there, and then also, you know, going back to say we'll talk about Riverdale. All the guys on Riverdale, we would talk about, like, you know, we'd always have shirtless scenes, or especially the young guys. And yeah, I think it was Charles Melton was saying, somebody asked, like, what is it? What is it? Why do you guys always have, everybody has to have the abs and be shredded and look this way? And he said, superhero movies. He's like, I blame superhero movies. I was having a conversation with Sharon Taylor about this, and how, you know, when the superhero movies came out, and you've got Chris Pratt plays Star-Lord. He's the funny, kind of chunky guy from Parks and Rec, and he plays Star-Lord, and now he's got abs, and now he looks amazing for one movie, and then he could just be Chris Pratt again. You know, Paul Rudd got jacked for the first Ant-Man, but then he could be Paul Rudd again. But what happens is your memory, you now see Chris Pratt with his shirt off, shredded abs. That's how now you're thinking, because that was such an exceptional scene, and he worked so hard to get there, and you remember that. So now you see Star-Lord, but now you're thinking of Star-Lord without a shirt on. You're thinking of that scene. You know,
and also you're thinking of the transformation. You're like, oh, I was like, wow, he got hot.
Yeah, and then you think, when you look at, you know, we can go through the Chris's here, but, like, you know, Chris Evans as Captain America, I think he would kind of go up and down, but I think the biggest one that ends up accidentally putting a lot of pressure on people will be Hemsworth. But that guy, he works so hard, and to go from how big he got in the last movie, he was massive. Like, he was big in Ragnarok, which is one of my favorite Marvel movies, probably my favorite Marvel movie. But he got so big, and then, but he doesn't walk around that big. But that scene where he's naked in front of Russell Crowe, you know, you watch him in interviews. I mean, that's like, he got real big, then he had to starve himself. There's a water depletion thing that you have to do, like the dehydration. Every time we did that on Riverdale, it was like, Riverdale was so great, they would make all the shirtless scenes, they would shoot first in the day, because they knew their actor was going to be hungry and thirsty and grumpy and
cranky.
So what you see on camera is a combination of, like, it's a lot of diet on top of the training, plus that's dehydration. You do a water cut for, you know, days. You drink an insane amount of water, and then you drink no water. Wow. And you dehydrate yourself. And then the last thing you do is you eat something really salty, and then you eat something really sugary. The sugar will make you vascular, and the salt and a bit of carbs will take every last ounce of water and put it into digesting. And so your body just depletes itself of water, and you probably weigh 15 pounds, 20 pounds less, because that's a lot, mostly water. But you look bigger because your skin is now tight and thin, and it's insane what we do. Like, it's really
it's the science.
crazy.
Wow, that was the next thing I was getting to, is like Riverdale. I know one of my friends was one of the key makeup artists on it, April Beer.
I love April.
Yeah.
April and Jen McNee mostly did my makeup.
Yeah, April came and stayed with me in Paris, and like
great.
I took her around.
She's
and
the best. She's the best.
She's
Hi, April.
This is so lovely, and we actually met doing an indie that kind of went to LA and Mexico. Sadly, it never came out. But I wanted to talk about working on Riverdale, like all over I know they stopped filming, and it was quite emotional. Like, she told me about the whole experience, what it was like. they had a huge fan base, and how it first started, and then it kind of got darker, and then there were the musicals, and it's like ongoing and then you have all these creatures, and then they're going back in time. Like, what was that like to work on this big show?
It was a bittersweet job for me to get because, like everybody who ever met him, I loved Luke Perry very much. And Luke was very, very kind to me early in my career. We did a few movies together. We met on a TV show called Jeremiah years ago, and then Luke would come up and do these westerns, often with Martin Wood from Sanctuary, who's a director, executive producer on Sanctuary, and they would bring me in to do these westerns with Luke, and we always hit it off. We had a great time, and when he passed, and they were talking to me about playing his brother, I don't know. I mean, Luke and I used to joke that we looked related from the eyebrows up because we just got these giant wrinkly foreheads. And then they said that they were, the character was going to be the opposite. He was going to be broken. He was going to be ex-soldier, PTSD, and really rough around the edges, and was always in his brother's shadow. And I was like, well, that's the way to do it. And I remember my first day on set, someone said, there's some big shoes to fill. And the words that came out of my mouth, I'm not usually this clever, but I said, well, thankfully I brought my own, because I would never try. And that kind of stuck, and I was in a room full of people when I said that, and I think that stuck with a lot of people. And then my first scene with KJ, I just remember we just connected, and it was over. We were really far apart. I remember the first time we delivered the dialogue together, and they said cut, and KJ just gave me this nod and a smile, and then I looked, and I realized there was a big portion of Luke in between us in the shot that no one had really clocked. And I was like, okay, it's another one of those organic moments. And some of the greatest gifts for me that came out of Riverdale were KJ. My friend Ted Sullivan, who is like a brother, he was a writer, co-executive producer on the show. I made family on that show. I love and respect that crew and that cast so very much. I miss it already. I do miss it. I know it was hard for a lot of people. A lot of those kids, 7 years, they grew up on that show. That's hard. That's really hard to grow up in the spotlight.
Just through April's social media, it's Vancouver is so small. So I saw all the turning off the lights and everything the last day, removing the makeup. I'm seeing all her stories and how emotional and heart-wrenching it was. And it was one of those shows that is kind of like Supernatural, where it's just going on and on in Vancouver for and then of course, great show, very well done, and
it employed a lot of people.
Yeah. Big following.
Yeah, and we got through COVID, we got through all that stuff, and the goodbyes. A lot of people were ready to be done, but the goodbyes were still. It was hard, that. The last couple episodes, when you start wrapping people out, first person, the reality starts to set in. You're like, oh, it's really happening. This is crazy. And then even the people that were done, that were just like, I'm happy it's over. I'm ready to move on. It was emotional. I remember my last day, I didn't want to leave. I was like, it was hard. And they clapped me out, and I was good. I was fine. And then KJ came up and he just gave me this big hug, and he whispered something in my ear that I won't. That's for me and him. But he wrecked me. I was fine.
Yeah.
And I get emotional even just thinking about it now, because it's intense. It was 20-something episodes every year for 7 years. That's a great run, but it's a lot of work. A lot of work, especially. Babies were born. Relationships formed and ended and formed again, and there was a lot happened. And even in the time I was on there, a lot happened, and I watched. We always refer to them as the kids. Obviously, they're not kids now, but I watched them evolve and change and it was amazing. Right now, for example, like I am so proud of Charles Melton. May December, that movie. Charles is getting much deserved hype and praise. Charles is one of the funnest, sweetest, kindest people. You know, he's a big old mama's boy. I love that guy. I think he's wonderful. I mean, he's a goofball.
I've only seen the trailer, but right away, like on Netflix, it just sucked me, and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, well, Charles was filming that up until we were starting the final season. So we didn't get Charles for the first few episodes. And talking about weight, he put on a bunch of weight. He had to gain weight for that. And then he came back, and he was like, okay, he's Reggie, so he's got to get back in shape for the show. So fitness was a big discussion. And that's why I think it was Charles that said, you know, it's the superhero movies that put the pressure on young actors to be fit, but to be ripped. And it's
insanely.
Yeah.
No croissant over here.
No, but to be fair, so to be fair, women have had to do that for eternity in our business.
And I'm glad that men are talking about this now.
Yeah.
Because before they didn't.
No, and you look, I mean, what I was talking about with the superhero stuff, it's like, okay, Chris Pratt got to do that, and then they would make jokes about his chin in the movie, you know, like how Star-Lord put on weight, and that's great, but you're not going to let, that's not happening to Scarlett Johansson. You're not doing that for Black Widow, right? Like, Scarlett's still in skin-tight clothes every movie she's in. She's had to, you know, bust her butt in every movie as well. You know, and Riverdale being no exception. We did an episode, and Machen, who plays Alice Cooper on the show, she was directing, and you know, she said, Ryan, are you wearing a T-shirt under that jacket? And I said, yeah. She's like, okay, take the jacket off. She's like, yeah. Is it a tight T? She said, is it a tight T-shirt? And I said, is it Riverdale? Because my shirts were painted on. And so I said, yeah. And she's like, okay, take the jacket off. She's like, yeah. I want you to, you're going to have a wheel, we're in a mine, you're going to have a wheelbarrow, but I want you to flex. And I was like, what? And she's like, bring in the coconut oil. And they would lube me up with the coconut oil. I was like, and then I said, I was joking, and rightfully so, I was kind of berated for it. I said, well, I'm feeling a little objectified here. And I laughed. And I remember Casey Cott, who plays Kevin, he just goes, wrong show, bro. And then KJ, Charles, everyone's like, wrong show, bro. And then Machen went, boys, it's your turn now. 25 years. It's your turn. And we all went, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, it is. Okay, you betcha. And that was it. That was the last time I complained. It wasn't even a complaint. I was joking.
That should have been in the behind the scenes, like getting the, like, I can imagine, like, the makeup.
I was like, you got all these young guys that are all shredded, and she's like, no.
I'm sorry to say, I was gonna interject in there. I'm like, Ryan, that's a very fitted shirt as well. But it's like, I can tell you've been training, and it's like you're, like you said, I love the mindset. I feel like people are starting to talk about it now, but like the determination and the resilience that it takes to be a performer. And like something that you mentioned earlier when we were talking about Sanctuary, it's like when you're doing it, you're kind of like, okay, I'm good, I'm set for now, versus the mindset of this is today, what's going to happen 6 months from now. So there's a risk factor in there. And then part of that also creates alertness and this dedication to your craft, and not just your craft, but also your body, because how you're like when you say military, when you say all those characters, I'm like, yes, Ryan like this now, versus what I remember Ryan like back in the day, like Sanctuary days, I'm like, wow, the transformation. And it's great to see the evolution of you as a performer and as a person.
I just like to mix things up. I like to change, and I like to
challenge yourself. I
like to use my body as a tool in my work as much as I can, and I'm fortunate that I've had a career that's allowed me time and has accepted my crazy ideas and changes. And obviously now I play completely different characters. I'd love to play another character like Henry Foss from Sanctuary. I'd love to do that again. But right now I think the characters that are out there for me are usually military, ex-military, or first responders, and it's also the time creatively for guys that look like me to play those roles. I understand that I look a certain way, and I might represent a certain type of person that I don't align with necessarily socially or politically, but those voices are those voices do need to exist in storytelling, and I'm quite happy to play bad guys from time to time, but the opportunity to play an action hero for 3 movies now, hopefully more, has been something I'd always dreamed of since back when I was 12 years old, and I was such a comic book fan growing up, and I always thought, maybe one day I could be Wolverine, or Spider-Man was my guy growing up, and then as I got older, I was like, oh, maybe there's a chance for me to play Wolverine, and maybe there's a chance for me to play this character or that character. Pat Mills has this great character called Slane, and I was like, I want to play that guy. And I remember Pat Mills reaching out to me. He said, you'd be my second choice to play Slane in the movie. And I said, let me guess, your first choice? And he said, Tom Hardy. I was like, yeah,
Wow.
that would be my first choice too. But I got to do a TV show for only 1 season. I wish we'd gone longer, but COVID kind of killed us. It was called Astronauts for Ron Howard and Imagine Entertainment. And I got to be like a CEO, smart scientist kind of guy, but they let me look like this, and they put me in like tight turtlenecks and stuff, and we would joke that the character was like a cross between Elon Musk and Dan Bilzerian, if you know who that is. He's a bit of a interesting character, that guy. But it was okay, that's kind of fun, and kind of leaned into the arrogance of this guy becoming this successful CEO, and he is a smart guy, and he was able to create all this stuff and build a rocket, but then he went to the gym and was dating supermodels, and it was all that whole thing, and it was kind of fun.
And he wasn't Mr. Smiley Pants, because I remember working behind, I seeing you perform, and like definitely you have this presence, on camera, like for sure. That's so cool. I want to talk about like filming on location, because when I see some of those like sniper movie clips and going to these like fantastic, I haven't made it to Malta yet, like even though I was living in France and got a chance to like travel around the region, Europe, Africa a bit. What was that like? I feel like that has to be like a performer's dream, and then you're getting to do something like action-packed, and I saw some of your like stuff, and like of course from everything that you're wearing and like the trailer of the film, I'm like, man, this is so cool, because first I was like, is this shot here? Like, is this? And I'm like, no, there's no way that could be in
I know, it looks like
North
we shot
America.
some of those scenes on a blue screen. It looks like a backdrop, and then you realize, that was there. Like that's just Malta. That's just what Malta looks like. Malta's incredible. It's amazing. The Maltese crew was so fantastic. We were there for 7 weeks, and the experience was amazing. I'm a big history nerd. My stomach keeps rumbling. Sorry.
It's the coffee.
I'm a big history nerd, and I'm obsessed with certain parts of history, and I'm quite fascinated by the Knights Templar, even though some of they arguably did some horrible things. But the history of it is fascinating, and Malta is just steeped in history, and we live in North America. We're just babies. We're little baby countries. And when you leave North America, it's why I love traveling so much. Why I graduated high school at 17, and I left the country. I was traveling because when you leave the country and you realize the world that is out there, and you experience the world, it changes you drastically. And I love that, and I love learning other cultures and other histories. And my character in Sniper, the funnest part about playing, is called Zero, if you haven't seen it. which is interesting because he's called Zero because his name is Zeke Rosenberg. People call me Ryro because Ryan Robbins. So another organic piece of happiness. He speaks multiple languages, so I get to learn multiple. I get to learn how to speak, and I need to speak them properly and appropriately with the right inflections.
Can you tell us like which languages?
Well, I speak Japanese a lot, and I had to speak Maltese in Malta. Just one line. The joke is I can only speak this one line of Maltese, which was a funny bit, and it was great. And the Maltese language is it's interesting and it's tricky, but they have what appears to be a temple that's like they don't even know how old it is. It's older than the pyramids. And you can just walk through it. So I didn't have a lot of time off, but when I did a lot of history studying and traveling, and I was very fortunate. Our Maltese producer, his name's Paul Parker, and I got to meet mayors, and I got to meet Templars, and I got these really cool tours. Like I got this really cool tour of the Inquisitor's Palace that like most people don't get, and I got to see these like cathedrals and find out that underground of this cathedral is this whole other world. It was crazy. It was such a cool country. But currently, the people that I would meet there were like poker players and crypto bros. It's just like where I just met loads of poker players and crypto bros. I met a couple. One guy I met was a Forbes 30 under 30 American living in Malta, and it's the tiniest little island. If you don't know where Malta is, where Italy is the boot and Sicily is the ball that it's kicking, Malta's like this tiny little crumb underneath the ball, underneath Sicily. It's about a 90-minute ferry ride to Sicily from Malta. And there's also Malta, and then this even smaller island called Gozo, which is a really cool place. Don't miss, if you go to Malta, don't miss Gozo. You have to go there. It's very cool. And Maltese people are incredible. It's a very social environment, right? Like a lot of European countries, where you don't just walk into a restaurant on a weekend because you need a reservation, because Saturday is when you go for dinners with your friends. Sundays when you go for dinners with your families. Thursday after work wine. Everybody smokes a lot there. It's crazy. A lot of smoking. But with that atmosphere and that much social connection and community that they had, it was a culture shock coming home, because I realized we are so angry. We are so angry here. Not to get heavy, I'm going to get heavy here, but when I came home, as soon as I got into traffic, I was like, whoa. Like, Malta's a terrifying place to drive. There are no traffic lights. It's all traffic circles. Everything is a suggestion, not necessarily a law. But they all just do it, and they get along, and everybody's friendly. And even if they're arguing, it's not personal. They get over it. It seemed fine. Like, it's 500,000 people on an island that I think is like 14 kilometers by 30 kilometers or something. I maybe have that wrong, but it's a lot of people and a lot of cars. But they work it out, and they enjoy life. They live. So I come home, and this road rage everywhere, and people are looking to be offended. Instead of people now, we assume the worst. Instead of giving somebody the benefit of the doubt, or assuming the best and I'll let you disappoint me, now we just assume you're going to do something wrong or say something wrong, or you're going to offend me. So I'm approaching this conversation defensive. Because I already assume you're not going to be a good person. And that just blew my mind. I didn't realize that until I left for 7 weeks, went to a place like Malta, and came back. And it broke my heart.
It's also like I understand, because I lived in Paris for 2 years, and I was in a relationship there, and like seeing how people do life. I found like Europe to be like a hybrid of the East and West. Like I come from Pakistan and grew up traveling across Asia when I was a kid, and it's like your neighbor, auntie, uncle, everyone has to have a say in your life and what you're doing. Here, everyone's too far apart. I found like in Europe, it was such a happy middle. Like family was important, community was important, friends were important, like, you know, the patio time and like, versus here, it's like if I see my friends or anything, it's like everything has to be like on the dot. I have something else and this and that. And I think we've prioritized like work above human connection, I feel.
We prioritize a lot of things above human connection. I think we also don't spend any time or enough time learning, but we behave like we know everything when we're not learning anything. And we talk like we know everything because we read something on social media that resonated with us, so therefore it must be true because I want it to be true. And therefore you must think it's true because I want it to be true, so you need to want it to be true as well. And it's a really tricky time. I don't use social media a lot. I probably should. I have a hard time navigating it. I think I'm surprisingly very, people are surprised maybe, but I'm really sensitive. I feel very strongly, and when someone hurts, like I feel it, you know, and I want to fix it. And there's just so much anger and pain, and everybody wants to judge it. Nobody wants to, and it's great that we're talking about mental health, but we can talk about mental health, but we can talk about mental health here, and we can talk about what are we still talking about it when we leave here? Are we still talking about it at home? Are we talking about it with our kids? Are we, or are we talking about it because it's a trendy topic? We need to be careful with that. We need to be careful with these. I don't like the term virtue signaling, but we need to be careful about hopping on a topic because it's a trend. When mental health isn't a trend, it is really, really real. And I don't want it to be a trend that we stop talking about at some point because we're talking about the next thing. We move on to the next thing so quickly here that we lose sight of, we never solve the thing because, well, I talked about that, so I've done my duty. Now, because I have discussed it, I have done my duty, you know. Are you a good ally because, you know, you say the right thing in an interview? Does that make you a good ally, or does that just make you feel good about yourself? Are you still going to be that ally tomorrow? Are you going to be that ally a year from now, 5 years from now? Are you still going to do that? Are you still going to fight for the people that need you to fight for them when it really, really matters, not when you're in front of a camera? I worry about that. You know, I'm raising 2 daughters. I worry about that. You know, I want to be the best version of myself in all facets of my life, whether I'm on camera or not.
Aware and conscious of me, and it's great to also hear, you know, as a dad and as a father of especially girls. Thank you so much for mentioning and talking about that. I truly, truly appreciate it. I would love to hear, before, I know it's like a rainy, long day in downtown, and then you have to head back home. I love asking people, you prepare yourself. My first production company was called Inspired Life, and the show that I did earlier this year with TELUS STORYHIVE was called The Inspired Life Vancouver. And this may sound like a generic thing, but I love to ask, even if I think I know the answer, what inspires you in life? Like, what gets you going, even on days that are like tough or, you know, challenging? What inspires you to create, to perform, to do what you do?
I mean, the obvious question is my kids. It's true. It's obvious because it's true. My children inspire me immensely. But I find inspiration in the strangest things. I find inspiration in an object. If I can see a scrap piece of metal and I can see that it wants to be a functional piece of art, and I will form that thing the shape it wants to be. I'll make that thing into a knife, or I'll make that thing into something, or I'll take an old motorcycle with my business partner Clancy. We'll take it apart, something somebody has given up on, something somebody has forgotten all about. And when you take that motorcycle apart, it tells you a story. It's telling you its story. And then when you put it back together, you're adding to that story, you're contributing to that story, and you're taking this thing that somebody has given up on, and you're making it amazing and beautiful and desirable, almost to spite the person that gave up on it. In a way, for me, it kind of gets that way a little bit. It's like, I don't want to be someone who quits on people, and I don't want to be someone who quits on things. I find inspiration in conversations like this, and I think if you're not finding inspiration, you need to go find it. Like, inspiration, that's fuel. That's fuel. You know, if we are not inspired, like, I wonder if the amount of anger, the amount of vitriol out there right now is due to lack of inspiration, and people becoming not complacent, people just being unhappy that their life didn't turn out the way they wanted it to, which is easy for someone like me to say, right? I'm very fortunate. My life, I'm doing exactly what I wanted to be doing since I was 12 years old. Would I like to be doing on a bigger level? Absolutely. That's why I'm saying I don't want to be complacent. That's why I don't think I'm content. But
you've also taken a lot of risks and challenges.
I was
because
homeless. I lived on these streets that we're on. I lived on these streets.
I did not know that.
So I knew it wasn't forever, and I knew I would get out of it, and I knew it was a sacrifice I needed to make to get to a place I needed to be, and to get over some mistakes that I had made, and it molded me and it shaped me. But I feel like I love the word inspiration. I think that we can. I wish that more people could find it, could be inspired, and then because then you're motivated, right? Inspiration breeds motivation, hopefully, and then, like, I say, like, make your bed in the morning. Just like that was my grandfather, right? The military, just make your bed. It's a small victory, but it's a victory, because when you get back to your room after you've had a crappy day or whatever, and you see that your bed is made, there's something that feels nice about that, right? It feels nice to go to a made bed. It sounds silly, it sounds frivolous. I'm telling you, just do something, make a small accomplishment, like small victories every day. And I think that's where you help find inspiration, right? Like, I think I love that term. I love that term. And you got me thinking now. I wonder if we have an overwhelming lack of inspiration, you know, like, who are we looking to for inspiration right now? Politicians, media, like your family members. I don't know.
And we have to definitely get out there and challenge ourselves and find it. I did make my bed today. I make it every day, and it actually, a friend of mine said this to me, like, I would say 9+ years ago, pretty much the same as you. It's a simple thing, and I couldn't understand. I couldn't wrap my. It's like, just try it, Zara. It's a simple thing. This will. I think there's a book called the miracle of, like, making your bed, or, like, you know, the life-changing habit of making your bed, or there's the title of a book, something similar to that. What would you say to the 18-year-old Ryan today?
Oh my goodness. Calm down. Oh, you're gonna make me cry. Yeah, my childhood is a tricky one. 18-year-old me was just joined a circus, and I was trying really hard to. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know where my place in the world was. I had no confidence, and I felt like by traveling, I could be whoever I wanted to be. Nobody knew me. I didn't have history with anybody, so I could just create a new version of myself everywhere I went. And in doing that, I found my true self. at least the beginnings of my true self. I'm still finding my true self, I think, or the confidence to be my true self. But I think I would tell my 18-year-old self to just be patient, be more patient, just calm down, say less, listen more, and work hard, and don't be so hard on yourself. God, don't be so hard on yourself. Give yourself a break, forgive yourself, and don't put so much pressure on yourself all the time. That's probably what I would say. I should tell myself that now.
I was thinking I can tell myself that now. Well, that's a great place.
I just don't think he would have listened. That's the problem. I don't think my 18-year-old self would have listened to a darn thing I said.
When is your birthday?
I'm doing really good not swearing, by the way.
No, you're doing good.
I'm like, not one, and I'm a cursor, so I'm just going to. I had not one.
High five.
I don't think any has left my mouth yet, which is really shocking.
When
for
is
me.
your birthday, Ryan?
November 26th.
That makes
Just
you
passed.
Sagittarius.
Yeah, just
Happy
passed.
belated
Thank
birthday.
you very much.
Yes, happy belated. Well, I know, there's, so many, in my brain, I keep thinking of all these, celebrities things I want to ask, but I feel like I really enjoy the place that we went to today, and I truly appreciate you joining us, and it's
been a
really
pleasure.
amazing to just, really dig deep and get to know you. I've seen you work. I've seen you on the red carpet. I've seen you on my television screen, and it's just also truly inspiring to see someone stick to it and really find the success that you found, and then also finding meaning.
Well, I don't have a choice but to stick to it. I don't have any other qualifications. I'm trapped, man. I got nothing. I remember watching an interview with Eddie Murphy, and they said, "What was your backup plan if acting and comedy didn't work out?" He said, "I didn't give myself a backup plan." Or, he called it a fallback plan. He said, "I give myself a fallback plan because that would have given me something to fall back to." And I remember thinking, genius. I'm not gonna have a fallback plan, and then cut to me living on the streets in downtown Vancouver, being like, Eddie Murphy, that was terrible advice. That's just awful advice. But here I am.
Here you are.
Perseverance.
Yeah.
Perseverance can pay off, and perseverance and good fortune, and here we are. I told you this coffee would make me chatty.
It was great. You bring coffee for all the guests. No, I love it. You're working with Anne Hathaway, Joel Kinnaman, all the folks, and I'm so grateful you took the time, and thank you so much for sharing yourself, your heart, your stories, and this means a lot. And I hope you found inspiration in the conversation we had today. And Ryan Robbins, whose real last name is Ryan Courier.
Courier, yeah.
Courier. I was like, how do you say that?
Yeah, Ryan Courier.
Ryan
it sounds
Courier.
like a French name, but
I love it.
it is a farrier is someone who grooms horses, and a farrier is someone who shoes horses, and a courier is someone who grooms horses. That's why it's called a currycomb.
Love
That's
it.
the origins of that word. I didn't change my name on purpose. You can talk to my mom about that when she remarried.
Got it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Ryan Robbins, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for watching. I'm your host, Zara Durrani. The show is brought to you and produced with the support of TELUS STORYHIVE. Until next time, catch you soon.